Okay, good morning. I'm looking for my husband, if anyone's seen him. So we're trying to find him. Ooh, let me see what's going on here. I just walked in the building. Okay, good. All right, this morning is e-learning for November, and I had fun writing this, and I can't wait to hear Steve's view on it as well. I mean, when we think about the head goose, every lesson when we were going out to the bus last week was all about where are the geese going, who's flying, why are they in the V, and I thought this is leading up perfectly to our e-learning next week. So it's perfect timing and perfect positioning, because if we look in the sky, we're witnessing the magic and the disciplines of the geese right now. And that doesn't happen by accident. So Steve, we're looking for Steve. Enter. Enter, nothing's happening. Okay, so I need to go to the next slide. And next slide. Good. All right, so we always start off with this because remember, inconsistencies lead to frustration, and you don't go home and say, oh my gosh, we were so inconsistent today. Remember, we go home and say, wow, we had a lot of frustration today. There were moments that I thought, how are we thinking? What are we doing? And if we don't address those, we settle. And if we settle, we lose. And I can tell you, even working in another division in our company last Friday and yesterday, I know the intentions of our organization are very pure, and the intentions of our team is wonderful. Our job as leaders is to witness, are there any frustrations out here? Are there any frustrations that need to have the system tweaked? Are there any frustrations that we need to lean into? And there were some, I mean, not a ton. It's a pretty well-oiled machine, but the things that we noticed could have helped everyone have less frustration. So we addressed those yesterday morning, and we're going to work on them. Whenever you're in the area of your business, whether you're listening at the front desk or you're witnessing work in the wash house or at the color bar, maybe you're storing your color wrong. If you don't address those and make changes, you're settling, and in the long term, you're going to lose. And so I always like starting with that, because what frustrations have you had recently? Is he joining us? Okay. All right, so don't let good get in the way of great. Now, that's another good example, because good enough never is. And sometimes good enough is good enough for people, but it can't be good enough to keep a customer. Don't let good get in the way of great. Sometimes we'll put energy into something that can't make a difference, but we feel good about it. Sometimes we should put energy into things that would make a difference, but we don't feel good about the process, so we put it on the back burner. What's getting in the way of great right now? We're getting ready to go into the rest of November and December, where emotions are high, traffic is high, sales are high, people's time management in their personal lives are trying to get everything done. And just don't let good get in the way of great, because we have an opportunity right now to make a difference out there, have a beautiful noise print going into the new year, and being prepared. So anyway, let's talk about the 5 lessons. The 5 lessons that we learn, and this is research proves, and then we're going to bring it back to the salon industry, so, or any business actually. When geese fly together, each goose provides additional lift and reduces air resistance for the goose or geese flying behind it. Okay, so let's talk about that. Flying in a V, they know, allows them to fly 70% further. They know that they can work in harmony. They share common values because they know this is our system, this is how we fly. They know they have a common destination. They arrive at the destination quicker and easier using less energy than if flying alone. So this is sustainable flying. And energy and enthusiasm of team lifts everyone up. All right, so that's number 1 lesson, and we'll bring it back in just a moment. Well, let's talk about it now. So when we are looking at When geese fly together, they each provide additional lift. You know, I always talk about this in consulting of salons, but probably for the last 15 years, we really try to help people say that their salon hours sometimes make them work alone versus flying in a V. And I'll always say, what's the best energy day in the salon? Well, when we're all here, of course. And we can work and we can use each other's creativity. We can capitalize on each other's energy. We have more people looking at each other, helping out should someone be in trouble. It reduces the steps we have to take in the salon, because when we're alone, we're doing everything. So I want to know, how are we flying each day? And sometimes we've positioned ourselves to be there for, say, I want to be open 60 hours in the community, but that 60 hours means we're flying alone in many cases. Sometimes 60 hours means we've got hours with no leadership whatsoever. The common destination, I can see my husband's coming in now. There he is. Hi, honey. Good morning. Okay, first of all, he's too close to the camera. Hi. Oh, and he's calling. All right, so I'll keep going. So when you look at this, what is our destination? What are we trying to accomplish? And how do we provide additional lift and have people be able to capitalize on energy? This is something you really need to think about. Even the owner sometimes is there. Sometimes they're the busiest owner. Sometimes they look around and people are in the back room. And that would never fly, excuse the pun, but that would never fly with the geese, because they know they need everyone to produce a great result. And so if we're trying to be, let's say our goal is a $500,000 salon, that's our destination, or a $750,000 a year producer, or even $1 million is our goal for the first time. How are we going to get to that destination? How are we going to be able to accomplish that? Steve, are you on?
I am. Good morning.
Hey, there you are. So we're talking about the #1 lesson, and when geese fly together, Goose provides additional lift. And I brought up the fact about salon hours that sometimes, and we've always asked when coaching salons, what's the best energy day in the salon? They said, well, we're all here. Yet they choose to fly alone a lot of times. So we really try to encourage them to capitalize on that energy, because energy produces results that might not be the best day this week, but over time, energy creates momentum in business for the professional and for the guests.
Well, you know what I think about when it comes to that is have you ever been in a room or been in a group of people and you started clapping and no one else clapped at that? How awkward does it feel to clap alone? And how great does it feel when you start a group clapping together to root on a speaker? It's kind of like the difference in creating energy in a salon by yourself. It's awkward. It's hard to create energy in a salon by yourself. It's hard to generate that momentum. But when you're with a group, it's no wonder that people tell us all the time that the energy is the best in a salon when we're all here. It's because you've got a group of people moving in the same direction, making it easier. You feed off each other's energy, and it'll always be that way. And the geese are a great lesson for that, because 70% further, because they're together and because they're in a V formation and working together for common purposes. That's good for all of us.
I love that. Well, and think about how some stations are set up where people have too much room, too much square footage. I mean, sometimes they fly in a V because being close together also creates that kind of energy. And make sure you take a look at your salon layout and say, does this create energy or does it create independence? And I would look at that. It's something that even when we walk through here, or even when I'm at the schools, I always question when I'm at the schools during the day when there might be not not a lot of traffic, why are you clearing the back of the house versus the front of the school where people can see that you're together? Make it look like there's more. I learned that from the restaurant industry a lot. How you set up your tables can make a room look empty, or it can make it look more full. And I'm constantly in a small group. Like, let's say, I'll give you an example. If I have 6 round tables and there's 30 people, I could probably do 5 people at 6 tables. I'd rather put 12 tables in there and have 3 at each table and make it look like we're doing half seats and make it look fuller. It's because the illusion is better than the reality that it's a small group. And that's why you always want to make sure. Sometimes people are in the same station. They might be 2 people working there, and ironically enough, it's the 2 people that work in the back. So the whole salon looks empty until we walk to there. It just doesn't work.
Well, you know, Terry, that's why I like the idea of nomadic stations.
Right.
I mean, like nomad, you can wander anywhere where there's an open station, you can go. Now that requires a little bit of a different thought process. One of which is that the stations need to be outfitted from a tool standpoint, specifically irons and dryers and whatnot, and maybe trimmers and the sort. But you know, it also says then that tools and razors and things like that are on a tool belt. But I really like that feeling, because then you can say, we always fill from front to back. We always fill from front to back. That's the only way I think we're really going to be able to accomplish that. If people make a station their shrine, you know, the ode to me type of station that has my children and my accomplishments and so on, you're always going to have that where you'll fill sporadically based on schedule rather than fill from front to back.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go to lesson 2. When a goose drops out of the V formation, it quickly discovers that it requires a great deal of effort and an energy to fly. Goose that rejoins the V formation to take advantage of the lifting power. Well, we can go many places with this one in the beauty industry. But when someone drops out of the V, all of a sudden they go, holy goodness. I mean, this takes a whole lot more energy for me to do this thing on my own. I never realized what this team atmosphere created and how much I could capitalize on the team V. You know, what's amazing to me is they had to learn it the hard way, right? They didn't learn it the easy way. They weren't told in the beginning. They learned it the hard way. And we've all had that in the beauty industry too. People that we've created and developed and went out on their own and said, holy goodness, I had no idea that it was this hard, and I didn't realize how much was done. Now, there's a couple of things. First of all, I think the geese should get together and have a family meeting every day and say, remember, we fly further together, right? And remind them that what the V formation does. However, maybe it's in their culture that, you know, true maturity happens when you figure this thing out on your own. But what we have to do is we do have to remind them what we are able to accomplish as a team in the salon. And remember, when we started off this conversation, it was about what are the frustrations. And if we're not dealing with the frustrations, people start keeping score on the frustrations and think they can do it better on their own without any, soon realizing everything that's actually provided and done for them. And we witness this in the schools. We witness this in new talent. We even witness this with our legacy employees. How often do the legacies drop out of the V because they say, look, I just want to come in and do my clients and get out of here. So the legacy drops out of the V. They're still there, they just dropped out of the V, and you let them. Or the new people drop out of the V saying, you know, I've been an assistant too long. This isn't rocket science, I can do this. And they drop out of the V, and we let them. We, as the head goose, also have to rally to keep them in the V. And we're going to talk about that when we talk into the WH lessons. Steve, do you want to add on this one?
Well, I just think that, I know what's coming next, and some of what I want to say is in the coming slides. But one thing is for sure: when a goose drops off, there's two geese that will go with that goose to check on them, and it's always one of the things that's been studied about that, and this has been studied by the Harvard Business Review. It's a lesson that's taught by them.
Yeah, you're on lesson 5. We're on lesson 2.
I know.
Okay,
I know.
That's okay.
And we'll get there. But the most important thing, and I don't think I saw this anywhere in there, is that it's each goose's responsibility to fly or not to fly. They make that. Each goose decides to fly or not to fly. And I think that sometimes when we're talking about our team dynamics in a business, sometimes we have people that have chosen not to fly, and we refuse to believe it, or we refuse to recognize it or notice it. We've let them choose not to fly, and yet they're still considered part of our team.
And their actions tell us that at the top of their voice.
Right.
In silence. Okay, let's go on to the next one, lesson 3. Geese rotate leadership. Why don't you take this one, honey?
Well, for anyone that wants to know more about this, there's a great book that's been adopted by Harvard, and it's called The Flight of the Buffalo. And a couple of people, one of the authors is Ralph Stayer, S-T-A-Y-E-R. And Ralph talks about the difference between a goose as a leader versus a buffalo as a leader. And in the case of the buffalo, there was always a leader in the group, and everyone followed the leader, even if it was to their peril.
Well,
they didn't think.
Remember the Indians? Remember the Indians? I love that part.
Okay. Well, I didn't know if you told the story. So, the setup for this whole lesson is the fact that in the early days of discovering America, the buffalo were so prevalent, and how did they become almost extinct? How did we get to the point where if you see a buffalo now, it's much the exception? You're probably in a zoo, or you're probably out somewhere west in Montana. I think I've seen them in Colorado once, but it's rare. So how did all these buffalo go away? How did they become almost extinct? How in those early days did people have the ability to kill really all those buffalo? And what they found was that the Indians, with their bow and arrow, what they would do is that they would study the herd of buffalo. They would determine who the leader was. And then what they would do is they would get the herd moving as a group, and literally, if they could force the buffalo off of a cliff or off of the side of a mountain, that all of the rest of that herd would go over the edge after them to their peril. And really, it's an interesting story. Well, the thing with a goose is that it's every goose knows the destination. Every single goose knows the destination because they do rotate leadership, and any one of them can be called upon to be the leader at any time. When the lead goose gets tired, they peel off. There's a little confusion in the V, and they peel off and go to the back where they can rest, and a new goose takes the lead because any one of them can be responsible to lead that group. So they all have to know the destination. And I think that's so powerful because in our groups, do we have one leader? Is there a head buffalo, or is there a goose? Does your whole team know what the destination is? Do they know how to get there? And do they know what's expected of not only themselves but of the others? See, that's one of the interesting things. I heard it talked about in football this weekend that it was unacceptable for a quarterback not to know his options. What's option 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Because he sets all that up in the huddle. He tells everyone their responsibilities in the huddle, and he has to know it. So for him to look confused as he's dropping back and not know, I look here first, I look there second, I look there third, I look there fourth, because he knows every person's responsibilities. It's kind of the same way. Do we all know each other's? Do we all know what we're responsible for in order to get to the destination? Or is it all just in one person's head?
Well, I think you can teach people if you communicate what the destination is and how you go about it. I'm going to use these examples at PSC that we've had in the last couple of days. We had to use our resources in a different way, and Steve and I actually were in order fulfillment and went out into the warehouse to assist. We can help, we can't lead the effort. I mean, I'm not out there all the time. I'm not going to be able to see. I'm looking for people who work there all the time to be the head goose wherever I'm working, to step in and say, okay, this is what we do, this is how you do it. And I loved when they noticed. It's not easy, but let's do a reality check. It's easier to say it to someone else's versus the boss's, but to look and say, you want to go here, you want to go there, you want to go over here. Because you do it all the time, meaning they are the geese that knows how to fly. We were coming out as cousins of the geese, right? We don't know where they're going. And we needed leadership. And sometimes people try to lead without communicating. That's really tough. I mean, what you're going to realize in lesson 4 is they honk all the time. If you're outside right now and you listen to the geese, they're communicating, they're cheering each other on, they're key to moving toward common goals and destination. Geese don't fly in silence. They make a lot of noise. They're rooting each other on, and that's their communication. And they could also be saying, go left, go right, did you see that over there? You know, they could be checking other geese out on the ground, right? The point is, they're communicating. And sometimes what I hear from is people don't talk enough in business. Sometimes the leaders keep everything in their head, and the staff doesn't know the destination or what the expectations are. And that's what's tough. That's what's really tough. Sometimes the obvious, get all the guests in, service them, and get them out. But how are we going to do that? When are we going to have bottlenecks? When are we going to get hit? Is it 4 o'clock today when we're going to get hit, and these are the different actions we need to take? We need to think about that. I mean, I don't know. I've never read anything about the geese in bad weather, but maybe that's not a factor for them. Maybe it is. But do you think they're talking about it? I'm sure they are. We're not talking about bad weather in our salon sometimes, or we're not talking about a traffic jam. And I think that's when I've got a salon right now that I'm coaching, and they do 2 shifts a day. They do a 9 to 3 and a 3 to 9, 2 6-hour shifts every day. And when I was working with the staff, they said, we really have a hard time at shift change. Shift change is a problem for us. It creates stress. And I said, okay, we've got to stay on this shift change thing until we master it. Because if the 3 o'clock's coming in and their chair's not available, we created a bottleneck. Or if we're not scheduling properly, or too many are going out, too many are coming in, we've got to master this shift change, or you got to make some changes. That's what I'm talking about when there's communication. What is the obvious things that we need to be honking at each other about? And it could be on rescheduling, it could be on take home, it could be upgrading the menu, it could be what's our signature service and we're not doing it in the wash house. It could be the way we're closing the sale, or the way we're greeting a guest at the front. All those things have to have disciplines and communication to say, this is how we're going to get to our destination.
I think the other thing that comes into this at times is, I think realistically, knowing at least the brands that we represent, most every salon has taken on either a line extension or a brand within the line that is represented. And how is that communicated? How is that? We always call it a launch, but really, if it's going to become part of the offering of that salon, who knows about it? And what do they know about it? And do they know, when you get into the WH issues, the what's and the whys and the whens and all of that, I think that sometimes we use only the symbol of unpacking the box and putting it on the shelf and
That's a
making some
launch.
product available on the styling stations, and we call that a launch. When really a thought process went into adding that to your offering for a reason that benefits your guest. And how well do we communicate that? Because really that alters the flight pattern.
Well,
and have we then altered our dialogue, and have we set our teams up to know what that destination is about that particular brand or product?
Wait, do they all have a launch sheet? And these are the 3 reasons why we brought the product in. This is what the product consists of. This is the price point. These are the reasons why we think it's going to be celebrated in the salon. And remember, if you give them the whys, it makes that the WHY''S, it makes them wise, and they'll talk about it. They're not going to talk about what they don't know. You know, Steve and I, it's so funny because in this world today that's moving so fast, if I ask a question, sometimes he'll say, I answered that 3 times. And I'll say, if I understood the answer, I wouldn't have asked you again. I mean, don't get it to the point where I don't want to ask you, right? And sometimes we do that with our staff. We taught you that. We taught you that. We taught you that. And then they're going to stop asking and they're just going to work in silence. That doesn't work either. And you have to stay. You know what? Maybe I didn't train you good enough. Maybe I didn't give you the power you needed to feel like you own that information. Let's go back and try something else. All right, so here's where you were going before. Enter. Lesson 5. Geese help each other. When a goose takes ill or is shot or injured, 2 geese will fall out of formation and remain with the weakened goose. They will stay with the weakened goose to protect them from predators until it recovers or dies. They don't just work together, they care for the well-being of each other. All right, so who's ill on staff right now in their performance? Who got shot? Who's injured? Who's not doing well? What 2 geese are falling out of the salon and going to help that fallen goose? Maybe we change stations. Maybe they're going to meet for an hour. We go back and we help that person. You know, sometimes we say, well, look, I didn't get that kind of attention when I was growing in the business. Well, we're smarter and better than we were before. We're going to go back, and one of the things that we say is go back and get them. You've got people right now that are struggling. You've got to go back and get them as an organization. And I'm not going to say that every single person is going to go back and get them, but there's certain people that will feel very comfortable doing that in the beginning. You know, I cheered for many years, and I go home for my my alumni homecoming game and cheer the second half. And I watch those young girls ranging from sometimes 14 till 18 years old. And I can see the leaders immediately, and they usually put the leaders in the middle and the rest of the squad is on the outside or in back. And you never see the ones that aren't leaders ever start a cheer. They're just waiting. They're waiting to participate. They're not going to participate first. And what I said to the coach is, I said, do you go back and get them? Do you teach them how, or say, you're going to lead 2 cheers tonight? She goes, I never thought of that. I said, get them participating, and they'll do better work for you. They're just waiting for someone else to start. And you've got to teach them how to start. In some cases, I see that in salons too. Go up to the front and entertain our guests while they're waiting. You're going to entertain if we get in a bottleneck situation today. You're going to go up to the front if we get a line backed up, checking out, and you're going to entertain. You go back and get them and teach them how to do it right. You want to say anything on that?
Well, I think one of the things I thought of is did this whole No Child Left Behind movement come from No Goose Left Behind? Mm-hmm. Did we learn that from studying the geese, and how important a lesson is it? And I know that there's times where we spend too much time, or more than we should have, going back to get someone to bring them along. There is a time that again you kind of cut your losses in business where you have invested time, effort, energy, and you're not seeing any appreciable gain from it or any growth. You're not seeing growth indicators as a result. That's really not what we're saying. What we're saying is that initial the want to go back to get them, the want to bring that person along, and develop them, and sometimes have the crucial conversation. I know that's always the leadership decision that's the toughest for me, and that's deciding to have a crucial conversation, or get Terry to do it. That was a little funny.
That was a little funny. Go have Terry do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then people say, yeah, you've got a reputation of being mean. Well, and sometimes, but you go back and get them. You're doing it hoping that your words will help have them have more confidence. And she said, it's funny. The coach and I were talking, and she said, this girl, as far as technique, she's so talented, but she's not able to bring that energy forward. I mean, she's got the best jump, she's got the best tumbling, she's got the probably the best skill set on the squad, yet she has no presence. Do we hear that in Salon sometimes? I can't believe this girl and how she's able to cut hair, or her color knowledge is amazing, and her creativity, but she has no presence. That's going to hurt her.
Well, Terry, that's one of the things that we say all the time, that the most talented or the busiest hairdresser isn't always the most technically brilliant. They always have the technical side and the people side of the business.
Well,
I've seen technically brilliant people not be able to make a living in this business.
Well, and that's why we did the next slide. You look at academic and technical. That's so easy to say, hey, can I show you how to hold your shears, versus can I teach you how to smell better today? There's a big difference between the two. Talking about someone's social capacity, or the entertainment factor or energy they have, or their attitude, image, and service, that's a lot more difficult than talk about academic and technical. We had a meeting with Jack's teachers last week, and I said, what else could we be doing to help? And she said, academically, you're doing more than most. Where we need to work on is the social side, his confidence. And that was really what I heard our responsibility to be. Steve, did you hear it like that? Because the academic side, we're hitting the mark on.
Yes.
But I heard that as to help. I could say that to salons too. Academically, your education commitment, your technical commitment to your staff, what you're sending them to, what you're going to. They walk into a class thinking they're going to learn a technique. Sometimes they need to walk in a class and just study presence the entire time. They get in these classes and think they're just watching skillful hands versus skillful presence. And that's something we really need to be working on. If you look at a weakness, that's usually the downfall, is the presence or lack of, or the energy or lack of the individuals have in an arena that mandates it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think about, one of the things that I think about relative to this is, and Terry, it's probably something that we should add to this slide, at least a term, which is called engagement.
Yeah.
Customer engagement, guest engagement. I was just at a conference last week, and everything is about engagement. And the conference I was at is how do you through technology engage a person? But what we have as people, and we're still a touch business, we're a relationship business. Relationship is about engagement. And are we running a business where we have to let the guest in?
Right. We just lost him for a minute. So we're going to go to the W questions, and I'm sure he'll come right back. There he is.
Okay.
All right. So
we can go to the W questions.
But engagement is, Emma's dancing in Palms now, and I look when I go. I look at the basketball players that are playing. Who's going to play high school ball on that 7th grade team right now, and 8th grade team. you know the coaches that have a chance of going further in their coaching based on their presence. You can see the girls dancing on the floor who've got a chance of going somewhere because of their presence. You've got little cheerleaders on the floor. I can see who's going to go somewhere because of presence. Please spend more time on energy and engagement and having people realize that people are judging their presence every single day. And then I want to leave it at that. Let's go into the W questions. So the WHs are the who, what, where, when, why, and how. We talked about this. Now what do we do with it? So let's go into it. I mean, you've got to decide who's going to fly, how we determine the destination, and what disciplines does this person need to display. When you're leading, are you that good example? In the restaurant industry, we had on Fridays and Saturday nights, the busiest nights, of course, we had one server that was always scheduled once a month to be an expediter, and it was usually on their night off. And people would work either Fridays or Saturday nights, one weekend nights. We always had an expediter, and that expediter would be able to increase the speed in which the dinners are going out. They wouldn't sit on the line too long. All right, what could an expediter be in the salon? Like, we're an expediter. They're just going to walk the floor. It's kind of like the clinic floor captain, Steve, like we try to produce in the school. Someone who's watching the clinic floor and saying, what are its needs right now? Where are our bottlenecks? What can we do? Communicating with the front desk, and someone who knows everything that's going on. This is an independent business if you allow it to be. It's a team business if you create the structure for it to be. And someone who's walking to say, I mean, I learned it at a young age, so it's sometimes hard for me to teach, but I can walk a restaurant right now and see what the needs are just by using the powder room. I can tell a server that's in trouble. I'm sure most of the room can do that too.
Terry, the thing that I'm hearing here is that an expediter, a service floor, clinic floor, a captain, their real role is to protect the guest experience.
Yeah,
their focus is solely on guest experience.
So why is it
and
they're just standing there?
The eyes have to be on the guest, period.
Right.
Someone in the business has to be charged with that. And so decide in your business who really is in charge of the guest experience. Who's in charge of what people receive. We know what we say we send out. We know what we say we do, but who's in charge of making sure that that's truly what's received?
Well, and a lot of times we think that front desk person, whether it's the concierge staff or the service coordinator or the service managers, but they're not walking the salon floor enough. They don't have a presence of just walking and looking to see where the opportunities for greatness are. They feel and sometimes a bad restaurant is someone who thinks that the hostess staff is just to get them in. That's not the last part. It's get them in and make sure that they enjoy it. And sometimes in salons, I think that we think that front desk is to answer the phone, schedule an appointment, get them in, not make sure it was an enjoyable experience. And there's a big difference between the two. And I think we're understaffed there in some cases, but we could also teach our assistants to have that engagement, teaching them to have that scanning ability. We talked about scanning this week. Scanning with a purpose, scanning to understand what the needs are of the business. And there's a lot of people that don't have that. I don't get out of the car without looking at the parking lot on my way in. I get out of the car with a purpose. I walk in the front door with a purpose. I go get my coffee so I can check and see what things are being done and how it looks. And I'm looking at the floor and I'm making sure all the lights are on. I don't have the luxury just to walk in. And you need to teach that. That's what the geese know. They don't have the luxury just to fly because at any time they can be called upon to do it. Next is, what do we need to do? What does flying need to look like in our business? And what does communication need to sound like? What kind of energy must the head goose have And what kind of eyes scanning does the head goose need? These are all the whats you need to ask. And this is a great staff meeting to put in place and say, what do we need to do? When do we look sloppy? When is it too hard to do business with us here? Why are we talking about the same things over and over again? I had to bring up something in a meeting yesterday, and I said, I have been asking for this for how long? When are we going to make this easy? And if I settle, we're going to lose. It might be my timing might be wrong, but if it's important, I still have to stay on it. What does the scanning of the head goose need? Is they're looking for opportunities of things that we need in place that can allow us to do what we do with ease and better. The next set of questions is, where? Where does this kind of thinking need to live in our business? Where are we going? What are the mile markers? How do we know we're making progress? Are we talking about these kind of things in our staff meetings? Or are we talking about dress code and punctuality? Again, where does this kind of thinking need to live? And it's saying, these are the 3 things we're working on. This is where we want to go. These are the improvements we want to make. See, sometimes they think that something new in the business means it has to be a product launch or it has to be a new service offering, like extensions or something. No, no, no. Sometimes the guest doesn't even have to be announced as something new. They witness and feel the new. Like, this is how we're going to greet. This is going to be our new dialogue on the phone. This is the new service way we're going to do our shampoo. Not all of that has to be announced, but it helps know what kind of things we're thinking about to improve our business. I mean, where are we going with this? Are we changing our hours? I like thinking about improvements, constant enhancements. And sometimes my ideas are weird, but I'd rather have weird ideas than none at all. Think of something that can make the boat go faster. We've talked about that in the past. You want to add on that?
Well, I agree, and this just talks about relative to to the story we're telling with the geese and knowing where we're going. First of all, is it obvious to our team where we're going? Do they know where we're going? Are we all pulling in the same direction? Are we all flying in the same direction? But also, do our guests know where we're going? Do they see a vision? See, people want to join. They want to belong. They want to participate. We all like businesses that are going places. It was announced last week on the news show I was watching that Apple is going to be the first $1 trillion a year business in U.S. history. And we know the stories about how people wait in line and they camp out to get the latest iPhone. And they wake up in the middle of the night to be the first one online to order the latest iPhone. We know where they're going because they tell us, and they let us in. It's no secret why they're a $1 trillion a year company.
I love the anticipation they create. It's kind of like in the movie theater. You go to the movies and you see trailers for 6 months out, and you're thinking, oh, I want to see that. And they start teasing you, like, right now I want to see the Murder on the Orient Express. And the trailer was good when we went to the theater, and I've been seeing ads for it. We don't even launch with excitement. We just put it on the shelf. Not only did we not create anticipation, when it was there was no popcorn, there's no thrill, there's nothing. And we want to know why our businesses or our staff is bored sometimes. We create the boredom. So we have to say, I mean, can you imagine? We flying today? Yeah, we're flying today again. We're geese. Or we get to fly today. We get to fly. And how do we put that in perspective so it becomes a priority? And I think sometimes when you go into a business that doesn't know how, there's not a dedicated area for what we're celebrating, or there's not a dedicated area for a launch, or there's not a dedicated area for service announcements or celebrating customers, then what is your dedicated areas? What are they? What could they be? we've got
Well, again, you just said it, Terry, and I would just say it again, maybe in a little different way. It's the difference between have to and get to. We get to do this. We don't have to do it. We get to do this. And that's the kind of positive energy that draws people in.
yes.
When you're doing the things that you get to do, when you feel like, still, I look at other people in other walks of life. You know, I had the unusual pleasure of being in a dental office this morning. And to me, if I worked in a dental office, it would be a have to. I get to be in the beauty business. I get to be around fashion and hair and excited people, creative people every day. That's what I get to do. And I'm so lucky for it because there's so many jobs. There's so many things that I just absolutely could not do. They would be have to do's. So
Good. Next. All right, so when does this happen? When do we start? Well, you're getting ready to go into 2000 and get through these holidays. I'm not asking you to say, look, I don't even know my name right now. That's fine. But when do we start? When do we change positions? When do we ask others to fly? I've got a typo there. Someone's supposed to check my work before this gets printed. But when do we ask others to step up and fly? And, you know, flying doesn't always mean we need you to work a Saturday or we need you to stay 3 hours over tonight. It means we need you to fly today while you're here. We need you to fly while you're here. So many people think that when they ask people for something, it means it's in addition to. No. I'm just asking you to give me your best effort right now. Remember, it's leadership's job to manage the effort. The talent. It's the employee's job to manage the effort. And, wow, thank God geese don't cut hair, right? Because we'd have our hands full competing with them. They just have great disciplines. So when do we start this? And maybe you're going to look at 2018 and say, hey, we're going to try this. Become an idea company. Apple's where they are because they're an idea company. You've got to, when does this happen? When do we become an idea salon? When do we start thinking big? And when do we start things? And when do we change who we are currently and make a different version of ourselves? I like that. When? And maybe you're going to have different staff meetings. Maybe you're going to change it up. I think about all the different kinds of dumb ideas I've had over the years where different staff meetings, maybe different initiatives, and many of them haven't worked. But once again, I'd rather have ideas that fail than no ideas at all. Because at some point, I'm going to hit it out of the park. When you think about even yesterday when we were meeting with a couple of our directors, we were talking about an issue, and I said, well, why not zone it out? Could you zone and then make this area in charge of this and this area in charge of that? Just let your ideas flow. And they might be no's immediately, but they could be yeses that'll make such a difference in the way people fly in your business. Create that time.
When it comes to this there's something that we learn in sales and something that I've passed on to our salon consultants, and that's that if I really believed in what I was doing and I really believed it was in your best interest, when do you think I would want you to start?
Or when do you think I'd want you to know?
Yeah, it'd be right now.
Right now.
And so that whole thing is, a shortened version of that is, if not now, when? And why not now? And why not us? There's so many different ways to look at this that bring about action. The key is that it's so much not what we know, it's what we act on and what we do that matters. And this when question. You look around and you don't like what you see, then you say, when is it going to change? When am I going to lead the charge on this? When am I going to educate so that we can make this change that so necessarily needs to be made?
Mm-hmm. Here's the why. And remember, if you tell them the why, WHY', it'll make them wise. Why is this necessary? Why did we get tired? Why did we need to pass it off to someone else? Why do we need to discuss this? Why do we not see this in ourselves? You know, there's a couple of things. I was at a Nordstrom beginning of October, and I went to a Nordstrom, and it was 2 weeks opening, grand opening in Beverly Hills. I forgot my Spanx, imagine that, and I had to, Stephanie Kachowski and Steve dropped me off, and I ran in to get a pair really quick. Well, I'm telling you, there were 7,000 employees working this grand opening. There were employees everywhere. They were at the bottom of the escalator, the top of the escalator, giving samples. It was amazing. What's that going to look like in a year? What's that going to look like in 2 years? Because I know they won't be at the escalator in 2 years. Why is it necessary to have that kind of energy when you're launching something? And why do we get tired? When does someone come together and say, okay, we're going to drop the escalator position, we're going to drop the elevator, we're going to drop the sample people on May 1st, 2018. Why was it necessary to grand open, but it's not necessary to sustain? That's what I don't understand. And I'm telling you, I used to open restaurants, so I know, there'd be 40 people, then 6 months later there'd be 5 bartenders, and 6 months later there'd be a half a bartender because they were the hostess as well now. What happens? Are we resigned to the fact that we can't maintain excellence? Are we resigned to the fact that now we have to cut back because our ideas and our engagement from the community isn't making a difference? Why? What happens? And how come we didn't see this ourselves? Why is it that before we opened, everything was in its place? Now we look like chaos, and our storage closets and everything else is a mess. Hey, I suffer from this too. These are lessons I learn as well. You've got to make time for things that are important. Period.
Well, the other thing is I think we need to remember that this current generation and the generations that are living in our salons right now, whether it be the millennials or what is it, the next generation, they need the why.
Oh, desperately.
So if we're not, they'll support whatever it is that we require of them, but they need to understand why. And so if we're not getting the result we want, it could be that they don't understand why it's important or why we think it's important.
So now you look how badly do we need all participation? Why is it that we allow some to fall back and not fly with us? How did we not catch them sooner? And how do we create a go back and get them culture? How do we create that? And I guess the first thing is you take your leadership, your legacy employees, that group of people that they have project development. What is their project? Project 2018 is we're going to go back and get them, the ones that weren't able to keep up with us. And you ask, are they injured? Are they done? Did they get shot? Meaning they got shot and can't recover from this injury? Are they going to die in my business if I don't get involved? Are they going to leave the industry as a result because I don't get involved? When the geese go back and they stay with them till they die or till they recover, and then they join up with another team of geese. I love that. And if we don't protect them, they're going to look for another place. That's why when we look at how are we expediting the career path of our staff, because this generation won't wait a year. They won't wait 2 years being an assistant. Too long for them. I can't even imagine. Watch how this goes. I can remember in the restaurant industry, you couldn't serve liquor till you were 18. A lot of times busboys would start at 15, 16 years old and watch the gratuities and watch the money that the servers were making. And all they wanted to do was get on the list from busboy to server. They wanted to get on that list. And I see when we didn't promote them or we weren't honest with them, and when they turned 18 and they were ready and they would turn 18 and say, can I be considered for the server program? The whole time we should have said to them, you're busboy material, but you're not server material. But as soon as we didn't take them into the server program, they leave and go somewhere else. Sometimes I feel the same thing happens at salons. They're great assistants, and we just don't know if they've got the engagement, but we're not telling them what they need to work on the entire time. You're going to lose them too. They won't wait that long. When they feel like they put the time in that they should be a hairdresser now, unless you're communicating with them, I think you're going to lose them. So go back and get them. Who's injured? Who's done? And please don't let them die in your business. That's it. That's the story today.
And you know, I think the other thing is that sometimes, especially in a people business, first of all, people always make the difference. That's what we're talking about here. And I think that sometimes a glance, sometimes a word of encouragement, sometimes your presence can mean so much to another person. And so start looking and saying, what needs to change? If I did this, what would the result be? And sometimes it's turning up your presence, turning up your attention that can make a big difference. And I think that's one of the things that these geese, in our metaphor today, these geese aren't texting, the geese aren't sending emails, the geese aren't making phone calls. The geese are present to one another.
Right.
And they are talking to one another, and they do feel a responsibility for the destination and for leadership. And so that's one of the differences. We can use all of these other things, all the other things that we talked about, the texting and the social media and the phone and all of that we can use if it enhances.
Yeah, if it complements.
Please don't ever think it replaces.
Wow, yes, that's a great message to close with. It should complement or enhance, but not replace, or not instead of. Good, we're done, honey.
All right.
We'll see you next month for our last one for 2017.
How is that possible?
I know. In 2018, we're starting off with a really good message in January and February, and I just wrote all the topics for 2018 that you'll see in the calendar. But this is fun. I hope this is creating a collection for you, and I hope these turn into staff meetings for you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks for your time today.
Bye-bye.